Adam Schiff, Democrat from California, a member of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, co-founder of the Democratic Study Group on National Security, as well as a graduate of Harvard Law. Good to see you, Congressman. Good morning.
Good to see you, Chris.
The next step of this, I guess the more serious step, it has come from 4 senators and 1 congressman so far, who are calling for Dzhokhar Tsarnaev to be tried as an enemy combatant. Let me play for you what South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham said about that.
This man, in my view, should be designated as a potential enemy combatant, and we should be allowed to question him for intelligence gathering purposes to find out about future attacks and terrorist organizations that may exist that he has knowledge of.
Congressman, you released a statement disagreeing with that. Why?
Well, I don't think there's a constitutional or legal basis to treat him as an enemy combatant. We're talking about an American citizen arrested on American soil with as yet no clear connection to al-Qaeda. So I don't see how we can do this constitutionally, and I understand that Senator Graham would like to prolong the interview, and we all want to get as much information as we can, but there are real constitutional limits to what we can do. And those limits, I think, apply in the situation of an American arrested for committing a heinous act like this on American soil. So I don't think there's a constitutional or legal basis. I also agree with Ann Collins. There's a lot that we can do prior to a Miranda warning. With this public safety exception, I think the courts will broadly interpret it because there is such a real threat to the public. So we can accomplish a lot of the information gathering that we need to under a constitutional structure without establishing a precedent where we're going to treat Americans like enemy combatants and throw them in a brig without having the legal or constitutional basis to do so.
As you know, the Federal High Value Interrogation Group is in charge of questioning him, and we know there's been a little back and forth with him doing some writing. What, from a national security standpoint, Congressman, do you want to know?
Well, I think we'd all like to know, first and foremost, is there any further risk to the public? Are there other co-conspirators out there that pose a risk? But then we'd like to know, how did this plot come about? Was there foreign direction? Are there foreign players that are still involved in this? How did they get the materials? How did they organize this? Was this really self-directed by these two, or was there foreign direction? And you can imagine over the next weeks and months, that's exactly what the intelligence agencies are going to be pouring through. We're going to know as much as we possibly can about every day in their lives over the last few years, every trip they made, every person they talked to, every family member that can be interviewed. And it will paint, I think, a pretty complete picture of how they were radicalized, what kind of influence the older brother had, what kind of role the younger brother had. I think we're going to learn a lot about what took place. But, I think one of the key questions for the intelligence community is, what is the foreign connection here? What happened on that trip to Dagestan? Were there things that we missed? And I really think it's premature for any of my colleagues or myself to conclude that the FBI dropped the ball or someone else dropped the ball.
But are you 100% confident that the FBI, which we know had Tamerlan Tsarnaev on its radar, didn't miss an opportunity to stop this? Or would you at least expect congressional hearings to help understand exactly what happened?
Oh, I'm not at all convinced that the FBI couldn't have missed something or didn't drop the ball, but I don't think we can tell on the basis of 48 hours of information. So absolutely, the intelligence committees ought to investigate this thoroughly. I want to see what kind of request and intelligence we received from the Russian government or others. All of that ought to be provided to the congressional committees, and it will. I guarantee you there's no way that we are going to rest until we see all of the information at our disposal so that we can make conclusions about what can be done to improve things in the future. We do have to realize, though, that in an open society there are limits to what we can do, and we don't have the capacity, as some I think are suggesting, to surveil everyone when we get some foreign intelligence on them, because frankly some of the foreign governments may give us derogatory information because they have their own motivations and having little to do with terrorism.
I'm out of time, Congressman, but I do just want to make sure that I understood you right. So you agree with your colleague, Congressman Peter King, who wants these records about the FBI and what they did in terms of following and investigating Tamerlan to be released to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not ready to go where Peter King is in indicting the FBI, but we need to get that information.
California Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you so much for coming on the program. It's good to see you.